Wild-caught sockeye salmon in the United States are a smart seafood choice because they are sustainably managed and responsibly caught under U.S. regulations. Sockeye salmon are one of the smaller Pacific salmon species, ranging from 1.5 to 2.5 feet long and weighing 4 to 15 pounds. Kokanee salmon, non-migratory sockeye salmon, rarely exceed 1.2 feet in length. Sea sockeye salmon have iridescent silver flanks, white bellies, and metallic blue-green upper parts, earning them the name bluebacks. Some small black spots may appear on the back, but the large spots characteristic of other Pacific salmon are absent. There are no spots on the fins, including the tail. When sockeye salmon return to freshwater to spawn, their heads turn green and their bodies turn bright red, hence their other common name in Alaska, red salmon. Spawning males have humped backs and curved jaws filled with small, visible teeth. Most sockeye salmon are migratory. They hatch in freshwater streams, rivers, or lakes and typically remain in freshwater lakes for 1 to 3 years. After which they reach the juvenile stage and migrate to the ocean to feed and grow. They typically mature and return to freshwater after 2 to 3 years at sea, but some species return earlier or stay at sea for longer, as long as 4 to 5 years. Sockeye salmon that return earlier are almost always males and are called jacks. They typically spawn in the summer or fall. Females select a spawning site, dig a nest with their tails, and lay eggs, from 2,000 to 4,500 eggs, in a nest. The male swims through the holes and fertilizes the eggs. The female uses her tail to cover the eggs with gravel. The eggs hatch in the winter, and the newly hatched salmon, a levis, will stay in the gravel, living off the reserves in their yolk sacs until early spring. They then emerge as fry and live for 1 to 3 years in freshwater before reaching the juvenile stage and migrating to the ocean, usually in the spring. All sockeye salmon die within a few weeks of spawning. They become sexually mature at about 5 years of age, meaning their lifespan is about 5 years, although some species live longer. The 4-year lifespan is more common in the Pacific Northwest. In freshwater, juvenile sockeye salmon feed primarily on zooplankton, small floating animals, small shrimp-like crustaceans, and insects. In the ocean, sockeye salmon continue to eat zooplankton but also eat larvae, small adult fish, and occasionally squid. Fish, including other salmonids, and birds feed on juvenile salmon. Sharks, lampreys, and marine mammals prey on adult salmon in the ocean. Bears, eagles, and occasionally wolves feed on sockeye salmon in freshwater. After salmon spawn and die, salmon carcasses are a valuable source of energy and nutrients for river ecosystems. Carcasses have been shown to improve the growth and survival of newly hatched salmon by supplying nitrogen and phosphorus compounds to streams. Freshwater lakes, streams, estuaries, and associated wetlands are important nursery grounds for sockeye salmon. Sockeye salmon migrate from freshwater to the ocean to continue growing, feeding, and maturing. Adult salmon leave the ocean, enter freshwater, and migrate many miles upstream to spawn, usually in the streams or lakes where they were born. Some species of sockeye salmon do not migrate, spending their entire lives in freshwater. In the Pacific Northwest, non-migratory sockeye salmon are called kokanee. As you learn about different types of trout lures, you will also need to think about what colors of lures to use in the waterways you plan to fish. Keep in mind that when fishing up to 50 feet deep, most colors are visible and acceptable for trout fishing except red. This is because red light is almost completely absorbed in the first 20 to 25 feet of depth. In deep, clear water, try greens, blues, and purples. If you are fishing a muddy river or stream, a spinnerbait can be a very effective trout bait because the vibration will help attract fish when the bait is not visible. A spinnerbait has one or more reflective metal blades that spin around to create this vibration when the bait is reeled in. You can fish spinnerbait using a variety of retrieve speeds, but you will generally have the best success when not reeling at a fast, hard speed. Retrieving at a slower speed will keep the bait spinning closer to the bottom of the water column and in the strike zone. If you are fishing for steelhead in a river, a spinnerbait is a good bait to try. Plugs are one of the most versatile and effective baits for salmon fishing. Although there are many shapes, colors, and sizes of plugs to choose from, don't worry. Fishing with plugs doesn't have to be complicated. For example, when fishing for king salmon in a river, you can try using a banana-shaped lure that wobbles to give yourself a better chance of catching a fish. Some anglers even wrap plugs with a piece of sardine, anchovy, or herring to make them more appealing to hungry king salmon. When fishing for trout in clear shallow water, consider using plugs that don't wobble or vibrate, which are unlikely to spook any fish found in these conditions. When trout are found in large schools near river mouths, you may want to try using a jig. If you're not sure what size or shape of jig to use, try your best to match the bait. Pay attention to the species of baitfish the trout are feeding on, then choose a jig that resembles that baitfish in appearance. In addition to size and shape, you'll also want to consider the weight of your jig. You should note that large, heavy jigs are best when fishing in water 50 feet or deeper for species like king salmon. Lighter jigs, 1/3 to 1 ounce, are often more effective when targeting coho salmon, as the species prefers to lurk closer to the surface. One of the most versatile freshwater fishing lures, spoons work well to attract salmon due to the vibrating motion they create when pulled or rolled through the water. These lures can be used when fishing for coho salmon from the bank, or they can be towed behind a boat in a large lake or reservoir for king salmon. If you plan to use your boat to tow a spoon, you may want to use one that has a rocking, side-to-side motion when pulled at a medium to fast speed. When fishing in slow-moving shallow rivers or streams, wider spoons are a good choice because the teardrop shape creates more lift. In deeper areas with faster currents, use thinner spoons that will sink in faster-moving water. Drift fishing is a popular method where the angler casts a line upstream, lets it drift down through the current or pool, and then reels it in to start the process over. You can cast from the bank or an anchored boat. In general, the idea is to weight your rig so that it bounces along the bottom, touching every foot or so, at roughly the same speed as the current. A larger weight will slow the lure's drift downstream, and a smaller weight will speed it up. The usual strategy is to work the entire process from the bank closest to you to the bank farthest from you, and from the upstream end of the stream, near the end of the rapid, to the downstream end of the stream, near the beginning of the next rapid, figure 1. In crowded conditions, you may simply have to find your way into a line of anglers and fish right there, without moving. Cast upstream at a 30 to 45 degree angle and let the lure bounce along until you reach a 45 to 30 degree angle downstream. Rewind and do it again. Your goal is to throw the bait to the bottom until a fish picks it up with its mouth. New anglers often have trouble distinguishing when a fish has taken the bait versus when their rod has caught on a rock. Over time, an angler will get a feel for the difference and know when to drop the hook and when to gently coax the rod off the rock. Typical drift fishing equipment includes an 8.5 or 9-foot rod rated for 15 to 30 pound line and a bait casting reel or spinning reel. For larger fish, like Chinook salmon, use 20 to 25 pound line. For smaller fish, like pink salmon, use 10 to 15 pound line. There are countless weights, lures, floats, and/or baits that anglers can use. A standard trout setup typically consists of a stopper at the end of the main line, a 12 to 48-inch leader to a single hook with an egg ring, a cork on the line above the hook, and yarn on the hook. Photo 1. For weight, push the stopper through a 3/4 length of rubber tubing and then push a pencil, lead into the tubing, or simply push the stopper through the paracord of slinky. Weight, photos 2 and 3. Bait and/or scent can be added to this rig. Salmon eggs and sand shrimp are the most common baits to add to this setup, but many others can be used. In lieu of a cork and yarn setup, you can also substitute a winged float, photo 4, or other type of drifting float, either for the cork or just the fish bait. The weight and cork setup can also be removed and you can drift with spoons or spinners, bouncing them along the bottom and slowly retrieving them. Plunking uses a similar setup to drifting, except that the bait is dropped into a holding area or migration path, and anchored in a spot, photo 5. The bait is then left in place until a fish strikes, or you decide to change baits. Active lures such as winged floats, spoons, spinners, or quickfish are often used when fishing in the current. Fishing can be done from shore or from a moored boat. A very popular lure on the Columbia River is the quickfish wrapped with a small sardine fillet or other fish. Photo 6. Use an 8.5 to 9 foot heavy rod. Your main line should be 40 to 60 pound monofilament or spectrum. At the end of the main line, thread your line through the end of the swivel or slider, add 4 to 6 beads, then tie to the swivel. Tie 4 to 6 feet of 40 to 60 pound monofilament leader to the other end of the swivel and then tie directly to the double locking pin on the quickfish. Tie an 18 to 30 inch length of 15 pound line to the swivel, or the swivel you threaded the main line through, and add 1 to 8 ounces of lead. Most trout anglers use K13 to K16 sizes. Use the larger size in slow water and the smaller size in faster water. Where you set up your rig on a river is an important element of baiting. On larger rivers, try to set up on an inside curve where any fish migrating up that side will be forced to go around that point. On smaller rivers, look for fish tails that jut out just upstream of rapids. These are areas where fish will rest after swimming through rapids. On low flows in small rivers, head towards the main flow and look for areas where the current starts to slow down a bit. On larger rivers or small rivers with high flows, work the edges where the current is not as fast. Remember that salmon migrating upstream are looking for the easiest route up the river, providing enough cover to make them feel safe from predators. That hiding place can be deep water, logs, rocks, bubble screens, or even white water in rapids. Float or float fishing is often used in situations where the water is very slow moving or even still, such as in a large whirlpool or a tide at low tide. 10 to 12 long rods are not uncommon for floats. Spectra lines are preferred because they do not stretch and float. To float, use a slip float, photo 9, a swivel, some weight to pull the line through the float, and a 12 to 24 leader to the lure or lure. A float stop and small beads are used to secure the float at the depth you want to fish. The float stop can be rolled through the rod guide rings if needed for easier casting. Float stops can be purchased pre-made or you can tie your own with 15 to 30 hash dacron using a single knot. Very early in the morning you may see fish hovering on the bottom and will want to set your float stop so that your rig is at the depth where you think the fish are hovering. As the sun hits the water, trout tend to move to the bottom and you should adjust your float stop so that your bait or lure is within a foot of the bottom. Professional float anglers use longer rods than drift or trolling rods, and switch their main line to a Spectra-based non-stretch line. When fishing in the current, you will occasionally need to tune the line. Teasing usually means lifting and or flipping the line to remove the belly, and then the line is in a straight line between the rod and the float. The line needs to be tapped to ensure a good hook if the float sinks. Spectra lines float and are therefore easier to tack on, and the non-stretch ensures that the entire hook is transferred to the bait or lure. Salmon eggs are a top choice for bait, although sand shrimp are popular for Chinook salmon. Some anglers like to fish both at the same time. Marabou lures, Photo 10, can be used in place of bait and can be especially effective for pink salmon or other salmon when the water is very shallow and clear. Drift fishing involves fishing from a boat that is constantly moving. The drag angler will use weights, divers, or sinkers to reach the desired depth to drop their bait or lure. Freshwater trout fishing is primarily done on the lower reaches of larger rivers, such as the Columbia River, where rising tides slow or even reverse the flow of the river so that the current flows upstream. Standard drifting rods equipped with 20 to 25 pound line can be used for drift fishing in rivers or bays. A typical drag fishing setup consists of a three-way swivel at the end of the main line, a 12 to 36-inch drop line and weight in the middle of the three-way swivel, and a 4 to 8 foot leader with a double hook and a herring or cut bait. While I have built my career successfully teaching the art of fly fishing for trout, I still like to go back to my childhood and try my hand at a spinning reel from time to time. Spinning is as much an art form as fly fishing, and here are a few reasons why. Too many times I have seen anglers willy-nillying down a lake, occasionally swooping in with no real fight or plan in mind, which is fine if you are just out for a day of fresh air. If your goal is to really catch trout on the vast trout lakes of the Tay, you need to be 100% focused on the efficiency of your water coverage throughout the day. The next few paragraphs are my take on how to ensure you catch salmon on your spinnerbait every time you visit, or at least make an offer or two learning to spin fishing for salmon before getting into the details of bait depth and retrieval options. The basics of this start with some methodical bank movement. Most spinnerbait rods used on the Tay are 10 feet, plus or minus a foot, long. Having your own measure to make life easier and moving one rod length with each cast throughout the day will obviously allow you to cover a large amount of water effectively. It is this precise coverage of water that will sooner or later position your spinnerbait in front of a biting salmon. I have seen anglers give a slight jerk and drop it 30 yards away, where the Tay is over 100 yards wide. Again, this is fine if you are just out for some fresh air, but personally I would look to maximize my range by getting some punch into each cast and not mess with half-hearted casting unless the river is fully flooded, where all you have to look for is margin. Hit each cast of your lure across the Tay at a slight upstream angle, as this curveball retrieval seems to be the most effective. Always remember that your real aim leading to the inevitable catch of a trout is to cover the water effectively. Before we go any further, let's recap the value of the above 2 points and why they are so important.